and welcome to the fourth edition of the Mint Build Business series. The conversations that we've had so far have been fascinating. Completely different and varied set of perspectives from CEOs from different industries. And it's going to be no different today, because it's my pleasure to welcome Vipul Khanna, CEO of Firstsource, who joins us all the way from San Francisco, and will be telling us a little bit about how he's been at the helm of a turnaround of a company, set it on a rapid growth path, and doing all kinds of interesting transformative things. Joining me in this conversation today, of course, is I call him my co-conspirator, Puneet Chandok. Welcome, Puneet, President and CEO of Amazon Web Services India and South Asia. So, a little bit of an introduction to Vipul, who's our guest today. He's joined the company from a stint at Cognizant, where he was responsible for building out their BPO business to a very large scale, $2 billion plus. But what's even more interesting to me, and we'll touch upon that in the conversation, is that before he joined the industry, as it were, he was actually setting up captive and R&D centers for large banks. And he was at UBS before that, where he scaled up operations to a huge degree. And it's an interesting transition that has been made. So we'll touch upon that as well, Vipul. So welcome to the show, Vipul Khanna. It's a pleasure to have you. And dare I say, thank you for also accommodating us. I know it's a little bit of an awkward time for you late in the evening in the Bay Area. But I'm sure you'll find this conversation very exciting. So in terms of Firstsource today, you talk about digital first, digital now. Now we've heard this term digital first many times. It's almost a cliche. Digital now is something you folks own. So what does this mean, and how does it actually translate into your capabilities and products and services?
Sure. Thank you for having me. Living on the West Coast, you get used to sort of giving away your mornings and evenings, and the daytime is kind of relatively free, but delighted to be here. So look, digital first, as you said, has been around for a while. I tend to think a little bit more visually. So to me, digital first is like, I always go to my teams and say, if you think about the old Stephen Covey example of big rocks in a beaker, right? Put the big rocks first, and then you supplement with the smaller grain and stuff. Saying like where the times are now, start with digital at the core of our solutions. And then the fine grain, the nuance is what the human ingenuity, the judgment, the connecting the dots come through, right? But put technology in the middle, as opposed to our industry always put humans in the middle, right? The digital now is the urgency, right? And urgency is coming from multiple fronts. We as consumers, we have changed our expectations very profoundly, right? I as a consumer can almost make out a difference when I'm buying a service from a born digital player versus a traditional company trying to be digital, right? You can make out the difference in their delivery, the product, etc., right? Plus we are spoiled, right? We are spoiled for instantaneousness, we are spoiled for personalization, etc., and we have limited patience for anything else. If you think from an enterprise standpoint, the technologies available to us in our industry and generally for enterprise operations, they're maturing so rapidly. Automation of processes, automation of contact centers, how you can analyze your processes, etc. Last 3-4 years have seen dramatic maturity in those technologies, right? And if you're late for 1 year in adopting that, the lagged impact could be like 5 years, right? It could come and haunt you for like 5 years. If you don't adapt now, it doesn't happen. And the third dimension, I think, is the transactional universe which BPO generally services. That's changing and compressing very dramatically, right? So the other day I was thinking of Puneet's business. My wife wanted to look for an old invoice from her Amazon purchases on 2019, right? In the old world, you would have called a contact center, hung around for like 20 minutes, right? While you would have been passed around. And then somebody would have transferred you around and they say, here's an invoice, if at all you could, right? But in Amazon, they have your purchases for the last 10 years in a very organized manner. You could click, get your invoice, download whatever you need to do with it, right? This would have been traditionally the domain of BPO to help, right? If a health insurance company wants to look at my claim for like 2 years ago, they'll have to go through a dramatic process. But today, with so much transactions online, our transaction universe is changing, right? And we are becoming, rather than just run, right? Historically, we've been run the most efficient, the most accurate, the most quality services, is going to more design and run, right? Design and run and keep repeating the cycle. So the urgency from consumer, from enterprise, and sort of the transactional change for our business makes us change our business model dramatically, right? And with that long preamble, I would say for us, digital means three things. One, digital services. So besides run, we go and do design and run, automate, etc., our clients' operations. The second is codify what we did through human skills into platforms where we combine technology, operations, and analytics into one stack and call it BPaaS, Business Process as Service. Choose a segment of a process, whether you bring your own technology or partner technology, but deliver an outcome and get paid for that outcome, right? So you take the next steps of SaaS to BPaaS. And the third element is our internal processes, right? Are they digital enough, right? Do we have a digital backbone? So we're just going through a refresh of our HCM. We're going a refresh for our CRM so that is more modern and contemporary and supports the offerings that we take out. So that's how I would summarize digital first, digital now.
How interesting. And we'll come back to the internal dimension of that in a second. Puneet, let me come to you and welcome back to the show. Vipul spoke about BPO being compressed, and I interpret that as the need for speed, as the need to be able to respond much faster to changes and customer requirements and so on, right? And if I was speaking to the CEO of a BPO company 5-7 years ago, a sentence like SaaS to BPaaS would not escape their lips, right? The change has been quite significant and dramatic. And underlying it is partnerships with companies such as yours, obviously. So tell us a little bit about the role that AWS plays, in this journey, and how you're working with the likes of Firstsource and others, and how do you see this partnership evolving over time from your perspective?
First of all, Jaideep, thank you for having me. Thrilled to be here as always, and Vipul, lovely to see you and do this with you. And Jaideep, I couldn't agree more with the way Vipul described this, right? Which is now customers are starting to look at you through a lens that does not even make sense at times. A CIO recently told me that he wants to have an Instagram to buy IT. And I said, an Instagram to buy IT? Never before have customers compared you to companies which are completely in different industries, right? And they're influencing the perception of our customers. And as Vipul said, right, if your customers are used to buying from Amazon, they expect the same level of delight, irrespective of what you're selling and how you're selling, right? So it's a very different world in terms of customer expectations. And I think all of this means that you need agility to not just keep up with customer demands, but almost stay a step ahead and invent on their behalf and delight them even before they know what they need, right? So that's where true innovation is happening. And this agility means the ability to scale up and scale down. The agility means go online or offline, depending on what your customers want. It means agility in terms of data, which is reduce the cost of curiosity in your business and invent on behalf of your customers. And quite honestly, if you can crack the code on this agility, that is truly the only competitive advantage that businesses today have. Doesn't matter what sector you are in. And that's where AWS and cloud come in. Cloud, as you know, reacts well to uncertainty. It changes everything when it comes to agility. And basically what we're trying to do with our customers, including partners like Firstsource, is help you get rid of your physical assets and make their virtual equivalents appear and disappear instantaneously based on your command, right? And that gives you the agility. You're not carrying the technical debt that slows you down. And then you can really use this agility to invent for your customers and really stay a step ahead of them and delight them as they would like.
It's interesting you say that, and as we chat today, we've just come out of the other side of the experience of what has become a very infamous cricket match. One of the interesting things that I've read in the last 2 days is that Hotstar, the app, had 20 million concurrent people watching live streaming video, and it was providing high definition services without so much as a blink. So when you talk about, Puneet, you spoke about cloud reacts well to peaks and troughs and uncertainty. I think that is probably one of the most extreme examples of the elasticity of the cloud that I can imagine, right? And underlying all of this, I think both of you have touched upon in different ways the importance of the organization and the people. And Vipul, I want to come back to you on this because, one of the things which your company puts out and has put out for a long time is this whole notion of a purpose-driven culture, right? Now, with due forgiveness to my colleagues in HR and that community, there's a lot of fluff that parades around as company culture, right? So what I'm really looking to understand is, how do you folks live it? What does it mean to you as the CEO and to, all the folks working in Firstsource?
Yeah. No, you're right. Purpose is a very broad, abstract term, right? Multiple dimensions to it. To me, strategy and purpose are inextricably linked, right? And culture is a big part of purpose, right? Of what we do. Embracing technology wholeheartedly in a people-centric business, right? A people-heavy business, in itself, I think is a purposeful step, because ultimately, economic progress and the value which it creates, even if it means short-term reskilling, dislocation, etc., it's still the right step to do, right? You owe it to your employees, you owe it to your customers, that you kind of embrace technology wholeheartedly, right? Regardless of the change and the transformation it kind of takes. The other part of purpose and hence culture to me is that I keep joking about that my kids have grown up and I can't even influence them. I can't change them, right? I can't tell them what to do. So if I can't change my children, how do I expect 30,000 people to do what I think they should be doing, right? So it has to be caught, right? It can't be taught, right? It has to be lived rather than told and posted out, right? And hence it starts with inside out in terms of what you live and what you kind of propagate and what you celebrate and what you kind of get a little bit annoyed at, right? And inside out also means, the other dimension of inside out to me is, are we taking the right care of people, paying them well, training them well, right? Most importantly, are we driving it to a point where they feel that they're doing something significant, right? So I'll give you a small example, right? We have a part of our business which does collections for retail consumer products, financial products, right? In theory, you're calling up people and saying, hey, you owe money, right? Or you're sending emails or chats or whatever, right? So you're doing that. One way to do it is, hey, you're a collector. The other way to think is, and that's what the teams have embraced, that I'm helping someone get their financial affairs in order so that they can repair their credit scores and access better quality products at better prices, right? And get on with their life if they have gotten stuck due to whatever reason, right? So it brings a very different mindset of how you approach that customer, how you feel about what you do. And when you go out and meet your friends, hey, what do you do? Hey, I help people get their financial affairs in order, and so on and so forth. So I think from basics to what they do, if you can connect it and empower them, right? I think we all talk about technology gives us the next best option, right? When you're using technology in a transaction, it gives you the best option to offer to the customer. But if you empower your people, they become your next best option for wares to the customer, right? So when you unleash them, the quality of service, etc., kind of exponentially improves. So that's kind of how I link about purpose and culture to drive better employee satisfaction and hence better growth.
How interesting. I mean, that's truly living the notion of purpose. So my compliments to you. Puneet, let me come to you as well. Amazon is also famous as a group, for its purpose in terms of, providing a certain level of product and service to customers, delivering amazing customer experience. It sets the benchmark again and again and again. What drives, that mega scale that you are at now, and you continue to drive that same level of customer experience, that same level of personalization, and I say this frankly also as an Amazon Prime customer who pretty much shops everything off your platform, and of course our newspapers, etc., all run on AWS as well, our platforms. So I've seen both specifically your business, but also from a consumer perspective, the Amazon.com platforms. So give us a little bit of the organizational view of this as a leader in the company. What's special? What's different?
No, Jaideep, I'll start with where kind of Vipul left this, right? Which is purpose starts by realizing and connecting the dots that what you do matters. Right? It's not just a transaction. It's not just It's just not just a job, right? And from an AWS perspective, our purpose in India, or our mission in India, as we call it, is to empower builders and businesses to build a better India, right? We truly are trying to build a force that moves the country forward. And that's what gets me and my team going every day, right? Which means bring the best of AWS to our customers like yourself, train a large proportion of people in India who need to be trained on cloud and technology, simplify technology for small and medium businesses in India, invest in infrastructure. I could go on, right? But that's a little bit of what we're trying to do in India. I think if I zoom out a little bit on the overall Amazon culture, I think at the core of it is what we call the day one mindset, Jaideep, which is both not just our culture, but also our operating model, right? And to Vipul's point, that's how business gets done at Amazon. That's how we operate. That's how we take decisions. It's also, when we say day one, it's also a way for us to acknowledge that scale will become a liability unless we consciously work against it. So how do we become as you said, right, a scale engine, but at the same time retain the heart of a startup or a business that's just starting today, and today is day one, right? And there are three things that we practice every day. First is customers at the heart of everything we do. We want to be the Earth's most customer-obsessed company, and that drives a lot of the innovation that you see on the platform. Second, we're constantly looking at this culture of experiments without the collateral damage of failure. And then third is high velocity decision making, which is in today's world, how do you really get leaders to move really fast and take decisions? So that's what day one culture is all about. It's about constantly being curious. It's about being nimble and agile. It's about doing a ton of experiments. It's about being brave enough to fail and not to live with the collateral damage of failure. And this permission to fail, if you can really learn the lessons and go back and surprise and delight your customers again and again, is truly energizing. So that's what keeps us going.
At the leadership level, mid-management level, even at a supervisor level, a lot of these messages sink in. How do you ensure that it's done at the last mile, at the frontline level, in the warehouses and the delivery and stuff? This aspect of day one, agility, etc.
That's a great question, Vipul, and I'm glad you asked that, right? And so the way we do this, Vipul, is we have a concept that we call leadership principles. And basically everything, Vipul, in the business is driven by these leadership principles. So for example, when we hire people, we hire builders, and the only way I assess candidates is on leadership principles. And leadership principles start with customer obsession and end with deliver results. And there are principles like bias for action, there are principles like DIP, but we basically assess people who are coming in on those leadership principles. Every performance evaluation is again done on those leadership principles. I could pretty much say with confidence, every second email that I write or read has a reference to the leadership principles. It's not weird to be called out at Amazon. I get called out very often saying, Puneet, that was day two behavior. You've taken too long to get this done, move faster. So it's a little bit of, it's almost, it's hard to explain, but it's almost the currency or the language or the way we operate, right? So everything is anchored around these leadership principles, which is basically our culture and our day one mindset. And we're constantly reinforcing that. And every big decision in the business is driven by leadership principles, nothing else. And that's how it kind of goes to the last person, or the person who's actually delivering the package, or who's in our data center getting the infrastructure up and running.
Interesting. Jaideep, when I moved to the US 6 years ago, we were setting up the house. I went to Macy's to buy something, and we had some promotion or something. So we said, hey, we have this coupon and we have a Macy's card, whatever. And the lady, the cashier, she said, no, I can't use this for this, but she didn't stop there. She said, I have two other promotions which I can offer you, and instead of 20%, you'll get 35%, right? And I was sitting there and thinking, she works for Macy, but she's thinking for me, right? Within the framework of whatever is done. And that was a very seminal moment for me, that how do you create that operating culture where you empower the folks with policy, with technology, right, with process, that they make the customer feel they're working for the customer, not for the organization they represent. Right. Kind of what you're saying.
No, it's a great story, Vipul. And in fact, Jaideep, if you allow me, just reminded me of another story. So we have a mechanism at Amazon that we call the and-on cord. And Vipul, you'll find this fascinating. So all our customer service agents, when they're hearing from customers around complaints, issues, problems, things that are broken, we have a mechanism called the and-on cord, where any customer service agent today can pull an and-on cord, which basically means that product goes off Amazon.com. Now you can imagine that's a fairly big decision, right? Because you're actually taking a product off the platform. But anybody, and that's how we're empowering the customer service agents. Going back to your point around saying, listen, they're not just taking a complaint, They're thinking about the customer, they're putting themselves in the customer's shoe. And if they're seeing the stables being delivered 3 times, every time it arrives broken because something is wrong with the packaging or the material, pull the andon cord, the table's off Amazon.com.
Wow.
And that then allows us to move really fast and fix the issue. And that's where this becomes very real.
That's incredible. That Puneet, I honestly didn't know that, and that is one of the best examples of empowerment, if not the best that I've ever heard. And I guess it's also a great segue into the final sort of chapter of our conversation, guys. So Vipul, we are, as a civilization around the world, now facing 4th, 5th or 6th or whatever wave of COVID, right? But all around us, I dare say, we've become more used to the risk of COVID. And we've, I think, by and large, accepted that it's not going away. So you hear less and less of this mythical term called the post-COVID world, and more about how are we going to live with COVID, and it's become part of our civilization. And, I'd just like to remind our viewers that, modern medicine hasn't found a way to kill viruses yet. So COVID isn't going away. It's as simple as that. But the point I'm trying to make here is this. Right now, as we adjust to the new normal, in the short term, it's of course accelerated digitalization around the world quite rapidly. But it's also moved customer expectations in a very dramatic way. And Puneet gave some great examples. Instagram for IT buying is a visual that I find hard to understand, but I can understand where the CIO is coming from, right? And I'm sure you will be also retooling and re-architecting your company. Sort of customer-facing processes all the way to the back office. So tell us a little bit about, when you're sitting with your leadership team and with your board, what is the strategy fine-tuning that you're looking to do, or the refresh you're looking to do, as you think about, living with COVID and continuing to drive that 40% growth that you folks have delivered over the last 2-3 years?
Yeah. Multiple dimensions, right? I think overarching level, I think notwithstanding COVID or baking in COVID, right? To me, growth is the mantra, and we've set ourselves a goal that we'll be a top quartile of our industry. Hopefully beat it, but at least commit to stay in the top quartile. What that means is that it presupposes that we are working through the technology shift, we are working through the business model shift, we are working through the operating model shift, and we are working with agility and with contemporary skills, right? Because otherwise I will not get leading growth, right? Because the world is changing so fast. So if I set the mantra for growth, a lot of things follow from there. Like, how will I do it, right? I cannot squeeze the lemon, what I have today, unless I can lay out different ways for that. Digital obviously becomes, today we do about 10% of our revenue comes from very tightly defined definition of what is digital revenue for us, right? But as we continue to grow at this space, I want digital in the next 5 years to be about 50% of our business. Some of it will cannibalize, some of it will get new, right? So this has to increase its proportion. It'll take an investment cycle, right? Just like any network business, it'll take a while. But once the adoption takes over, margin will improve as well, right? So growth and profitable margin, but it'll be still an investment phase to kind of get there. The second part, because about 1/3 of our business comes from healthcare, is that I would say that the one thing I've learned from COVID is that survival of the fittest, right? Whether it's genetic, whether it's location, right? Whether it's age, and hence the importance of health inside out becomes critical, right? I think a lot of people that I talk to, they have a very different perspective of how they'll think about health, how they think about their priorities. But what it also does, I think, is from a health policy, health infrastructure, and the opportunities that it creates, right? And within healthcare and across will be amazing, right? If you think about just remote patient monitoring as a way of continuous treatment rather than episodic treatment, that creates a massive opportunity, right? And we are not even in the first innings of starting that, right? Telehealth is just the harbinger of remote patient monitoring, and it opens up a vast industry, right? And it'll take all the modern tools. It'll take connectivity, it'll take analytics, right? It'll take a very design-oriented approach to continue to finesse it, right? On what you're learning from data and then offering back to the customers. So health becomes a big part of sort of the future going forward. And then I think, again, maybe accelerated by COVID, I think DeFi or as you think about the future of finance, completely changed through decentralized finance. Again, first innings, I think this will have massive repercussions to finance, and through finance, it'll change to different industries, right? And how we play that opportunity. Right now, it's all about co-creating and learning and growing with your customer. I think that will mean significant change to business models and skills required.
I just want to come in on that point, because when you talk about the change in business models, finance and health are two great examples where everything one reads says that AI is going to make a huge impact, maybe a disproportionately large impact in the solutions that you can offer, in the patient experience or the customer experience respectively.
So I think RPM, or remote patient monitoring, is fundamentally saying that I have continuous data feeds coming of a patient, right? Through a device, through whatever else, right? And what am I doing with it, right? So I've defined tolerance limits to say, if Vipul misses his medicine for 3 days, this is the action. And if he misses for 7 days, right, because the bottle is not moved, right? The bottle has the same number of pills, it should have reduced. This is the next level of action, right? And then there'll be a number of false alarms in it, right? Going through that. Machine learning will help continuously change to say, get a more relevant alarms, take out the false positives out of that one, get the right actions coming through that, right? That's one example of how patient monitoring and AI will mean that between the provider and me as a customer or a patient, right? That's a new term I heard. I shouldn't be a patient, I should be a customer here, right? What is the interaction coming to me? What is the quality of prompts coming to me? And the machine has to learn. Humans can't learn at that pace. Does that give you some clarity on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And, for you to be able to do that, I'll turn to you, Puneet, on this one, right? As businesses such as Firstsource are retooling for the future and, adding in new capabilities, changing their solutions, they're going to be looking to folks like yourself and your peers to be able to provide them with those services that are required to be able to power up, right? Which in turn, of course, will allow them to go and talk to a large bank and help them to transform their front office, to offer intelligent solutions to a utility, and so on and so forth. So what is the AWS journey in this context? Give us a little bit of insight into that, if you will.
So let me just build on what Vipul was saying, right, which is how business is really transforming, and then I'll talk about the AWS role, right? So, and I agree with you, Jaideep. I think COVID was a bit of a dress rehearsal for the new world, or a crash course, whatever you call it. But we're now entering a world which is more volatile and dynamic than ever. We've all kind of figured that out. But I think from a business's perspective, at least in India and South Asia, there are 3 shifts that are happening. First is, I think there's a realization that technology and cloud are inevitable. I think there's a clear realization, no matter what your size of business is, what sector you're in, you have to constantly invent and reinvent for your customers, be it deploying AI/ML, be it deploying analytics, be it reducing technical debt. And you can't do that without using technology and digital in an effective way, right? So digital is a question of survival now. It's not just a nice thing to do. I think the second thing businesses in India have realized is that technology and cloud and digital need to be at the center of your business, or core of your business, not just the periphery. Right? Digital transformation no longer has a beginning or a middle or a finishing line. It's a way of doing business. It's almost an everyday thing, right? It's not a project that you launch and finish and declare victory. And then the last thing people have realized is you got to move with speed. Speed matters now, right? Going back to this whole agility conversation, digital and technology and AI/ML are no longer post-it notes in a CEO's office. They are real programs that are delivering impact, and I'm seeing businesses move at a speed like never before. Give you a couple of examples to bring this to life. National Stock Exchange, right? We all know this, set up in 1994, is today the second largest electronic stock exchange in the world. And they've been investing in technology for the longest time, but they've really sped up now, right? Which is they're looking at ways to find modernizing their tech platform, just simplify the mechanics of trading so that lakhs of Indians can really get onto the stock exchange and be part of that movement. And that's why AWS and VMware came together to give them agility, scalability. We've helped them build a hybrid cloud infrastructure. But basically what they can do now because of technology is they scale on demand. They've improved their time to market. They're driving top of the line experience for their customers. And it's just an incredibly different way of working with customers, right? So that's what we're trying to do, which is as enterprises move at speed, as enterprises realize the value of technology and cloud, how do we make sure that we enable that journey at a speed like never before and really help them build and innovate for their customers? So that's what we try to do with AWS.
And Puneet,
Interesting.
we've taken all our healthcare assets, right, for the healthcare industry. We put them to a healthcare cloud, healthcare business cloud, so to say, right? Which means that all either enabling or direct customer-facing technology is on the cloud, built to a healthcare standard, acceptable standard, scalable, agile, etc., etc. But it also means that the next set of tools we build will be cloud native, so that once a client comes in and buys a service, right, adoption to other parts of the services will keep adding like a daisy wheel, right? It'll come off a cloud and interface easily with them. So I think new model of delivery for a classic human or BPO service through cloud is an application that we're finding as well.
No, you're right, Vipul. In fact, now I think the other thing that's changed in technology is we used to build technology within the four walls of our business. Now it does not. And Jaideep, you and I had a conversation last time around platforms and the ecosystem, right? But I'll give you another example, right? So all the AI/ML engines that power Amazon, our forecasting, our fraud detection, all our processes on Amazon.com today are available as services that any retail firm in the world can use and plug and play. They really don't need to build that anymore. Right? You can just plug and play and work through those and innovate on those, right? So that's the other shift that's happened in technology. It's not just about you and your business. It's about the ecosystem, as you said, Vipul. How do you really enable everybody in the healthcare value stream to really serve their customers better?
What both of you have really just painted in the last 5 minutes is what, the next 10 to 15 years, well, maybe not 15, but definitely what the next 7 to 10 years will look like in terms of the journey and how CEOs will have to think about retooling their businesses. And the only point I'll add to that is that, while our viewers might say, okay, this is all good, there's Amazon here, there's Firstsource here. I'll also say that if you're running a biscuit company or a clothing company or a cosmetics company or an industrial machinery company or an automotive company, these things are the only truth for you as well. The notion of digitally transforming every single process that you have, enabling it with data, putting it onto cloud-based infrastructures so you can be much more nimble and agile and respond to environmental changes that much faster, innovate that much faster, partner with other companies to build a stronger business ecosystem. All of these are true now across every sector of the economy. And on that note, Vipul and Puneet, I thank you very, very much and bring this conversation to a close. It's been an absolute pleasure, Vipul, having you with us all the way from San Francisco. Puneet, always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you very much. And with that, I bring to a close the 4th edition of the Mint Build Business series. Thank you all for watching, and I'll be shortly bringing you the 5th episode. Watch out for that.